tsunami's not a gigantic wave. A storm surge is. And people get the two confused. It's a big eye wall. It is well established. It's not weakening. It's continuing to strengthen. It's going to have a swath all the way up through Georgia. The way I look at it, it's going to hit Atlanta, then Augusta, and on into South Carolina, and right through the middle of North Carolina, and it's going to be dumping rain like crazy. The only thing different here is that this thing is not going to stop and hover for a couple of days in the same spot. It's moving at a rapid clip, which is the only thing you can say about it. Now, there was a bunch of previously damaging hurricanes. There's all kinds of misinformation out there, and it's because of the corruption of news. People are trying to report today, we've never had a Category 4 hit the Florida Panhandle. It isn't true. There have been all kinds of major hurricanes that have hit the Florida Panhandle. Experts have studied sea sediment and lake and river sediment and have found that hurricanes probably hit this region 1,000 years ago when nothing was there and nobody was there. There was certainly nothing there to damage. There was a hurricane that hit in a similar location back in 1906, and it wiped out everything from Mobile to Panama City, but there wasn't much to wipe out. There wasn't much infrastructure then, so it's crazy to start comparing financial damage, hurricanes of many, many years ago to today, because this region was not nearly as developed with infrastructure and homes and businesses as it is today. The degree of damage that this storm is going to cause is immeasurable. But people will be looking at it as a rebuilding opportunity. And a chance to, build it all over again, but you cannot miss the devastation that's coming with this. The Governor Rick Scott says he's scared to death about this. There's no stopping it. There's nowhere for people to go, and evacuation plans have been underway for a while. Some people, condominiums and apartments are leaving. There are those people that want to stay and live through one of these, merely if it's really like everybody says it's going to be. A curiosity among some people. You watch TV and they tell you how devastating it's going to be, how destructive it's going to be, how much rain there's going to be, how you can't survive it's going to be. And they say, I want to stay and see this. And then there are others who say, I want to stay and I'm going to protect my home. I'm going to hang in here with my homestead. I'm going to stay here with my pets. I am not leaving. You can't kick me out. So there will be some people who will hang on and stay. Now, this area is popularly known, even among the locals, as the Redneck Riviera. In modern political parlance, it means a bunch of poor white privileged people live there. And the drive-bys are surprisingly interested in this. I say surprisingly because there's not a central major population center that can be totally wiped out that they could equate with see how dangerous global warming is. But there is a midterm election coming up, and there is going to be a federal response to this. And as far as the media is concerned, there's an opportunity. The federal response won't be any good, and so they can call this Trump's Katrina. Don't get mad at me for talking about this, because I'm telling you, right now is exactly how assignment editors and producers throughout the drive-by media are looking at this. They are looking at this as a potential political event that they're hoping might be somewhat helpful to them in the midterm elections that are only 3 weeks away. There is a heated governor's race in Florida. Mayor of Tallahassee, Andrew Gillum, running against Ron DeSantis. And then Rick Scott, the current governor, is running for the Senate against the incumbent Bill Nelson. So there's a lot politically at stake here. You can't deny it, folks. And you cannot ignore the way the media is preparing a bunch of different scenarios to report on this. It's got the global warming component. That's number one. As a Category 4, 150 miles an hour, lots of destruction, human destruction as well. It's got all the ingredients there. It is the Republican voting stronghold of the state in the views of many. No. Look, you can get mad at me all you want. I'm just telling you, I know the media. You may think it insensitive of me to be speaking this way. I'm not. I'm telling you how they, in the drive-by media, are planning. And they'll react at some point. Little Brian Stelter go out there, I can't believe that these kinds of things are being said about us and the imminent danger of a storm. I'm just telling you, it won't be long to find out. It's hurricane kind of came out of nowhere. It was a little tropical storm down off the primary tobacco growing area of western Cuba, known as the Vuelta Bajo. Then it sprang to life as a Category 1, and the National Hurricane Center said, this thing it's looking very bad. Nobody was paying much attention to it, and then all of a sudden it's a Cat 3, and it's making a beeline for Panama City and Panama City Beach. And here we are. The media is now focused on this. Do you think, Mr. Snerdley, do you think there is, and I know it's going to sound crazy, but do you think the drive-bys might be looking for a bit of a respite from all this Kavanaugh stuff? And you don't think so? And you don't think the hurricane is providing just a momentary opportunity for... I know they hope it turns into Katrina for Trump. And Kavanaugh, they hope it turns it... And Rick Scott, of course, they wanted to turn into Katrina for every Republican involved here. You know what? Hillary Clinton went out the other day in an interview with Christiane Amanpour and pretty much admitted everything I have been trying to warn people of about the American left and the Democrat Party. She went out there and in her best Maxine Waters impersonation was encouraging people to be uncivil. And she was saying that it was justified being uncivil, given the opposition, the Republicans. And if they win the House, then they can go back to being civil. If they win the Senate, then they can return to civility. I mean, they're making the case. They're proving the point. And there isn't, I don't see, in all of this, crazy, deranged, unhinged behavior of left-wing activists, I haven't heard one elected Democrat denounce it. I haven't heard one elected Democrat attempt to distance himself or herself or the party from it. I haven't heard one elected Democrat suggest to these deranged protesters to dial it back. I haven't heard one. They are all encouraging it. My point is, this is who they all are. And with Hillary Clinton now advocating this incivility, what did I tell you yesterday? We're not in a battle of ideas anymore. We're not in an argument over ideas. They're not even looking at any of this as about ideas. They see America today as flawed and illegitimate and therefore in need of a new set of defining values that will serve to unify the people who want to be part of America. Not anything to do with our founding, not the Constitution, not the Declaration. That's out the window because all that's tainted. All of that was written by a bunch of privileged white guys who were setting up a system for themselves and their families and their descendants. And they didn't care about minorities and they didn't care about transgenders. Where did I see? Some state, I've got it in a stack, I'll have to find it. Some state on birth certificates is now going to offer a third gender option. On the birth certificate. They're crazy. They're literally nuts. They are at war with science. They're at war with biology. They're at war with physics. And they are at war with common sense. Hillary Clinton is not helping them with any of this. It's okay to be uncivil. It's okay to claw at the doors of the Supreme Court and try to get in to stop the swearing-in ceremony of Brett Kavanaugh. We've got that. We got some reaction to it coming up as well. and all eyes remain fixated once again on Hurricane Michael. This next 45 minutes to an hour will tell the tale in terms of the actual landfall. It's going to be anywhere from Mexico Beach up to Panama City, moving northwest along the coastline. Mexico Beach, I think it's what it is, all the way up to Panama City, then Panama City Beach. But this eye wall, according to all of the, and I've got some fascinating satellite photography here from the GOES 16 satellite. It's interesting the way they do this. You know how they take the radar and they attach different colors to it. And what I'm looking at is sheer solid black surrounding the eye wall. And most of the black is on the south and the west side. And then it gets a little lighter. There's some gray, then dark red, and then bright red, and then yellow, and then tan, and then orange, and then green, and then blue on the edges. Now, these colors do not represent rain intensity. They represent cloud tops. They represent the temperatures at the cloud tops, which determines condensation and can determine the intensity of rainfall. But most people watching this have no idea. They think, oh, my God, look at that, Mabel. Look, it must be raining 100 miles an hour. Look at that. It's black. It's black right around here. Look at that dark red. It's designed to scare you. It's designed to get your attention. It's cloud top temperatures. But my point is, it's solid around the eye wall. Looks like the most intense area of this is due west of the eye wall, which is where the population centers are based on where the eye wall looks like it's going to hit now. But even on the east side, east and northeast quadrants are where the strongest winds are. And those are going to be blowing offshore, toward offshore once they hit land on the northeastern side of the eye wall. But it's a solid eye wall, and it's a large eye wall. So it's a very, very intense storm. And in the next 45 minutes, it's going to hit land, and then we'll know where and the speed with which it will continue, the amount of rain and storm surge. So it's going to be a very, very bad bunch of days and intense bad few hours here for people who live in that region, the panhandle of Florida. We'll take a break and be back. Don't go away. Right. Pressure is dropping in the hurricane. That's not good. It's now 35 miles southwest of Mexico Beach, which is what I think the closest populated landfall area could be. But that's just my wild guess. One thing about these storms, they're reporting winds at 150 miles an hour. And they just showed neighboring cities and what the wind gusts are. The highest wind gusts right now around 64, 65 miles an hour in the Panama City Beach area. These 150-mile-an-hour winds are in the eye wall, folks. They are not the entire storm. I'm not trying to minimize the impact here. It's just that the reporting on these storms and the education on these storms in general is, I think, wanting. It's lacking, such as the way they colorize the graphics of these storms to make it look like hell on earth. When in any hurricane, the strongest winds are in the eye wall and a little, extended from it. But there's not too many places are going to get 150-mile-an-hour winds today where the eye wall hits and maybe 20 miles, depending on the size of the eye wall. Now, from there, it'll fall off. Nothing, 125 is no slouch. If you think that you've experienced 75-mile-an-hour winds, well, that's not bad. It's the effect of 150 versus 175 miles is not twice when you're in it. There is a multiplier effect of massive wind speed. So that if the fastest and the highest winds you've been in is 75 miles an hour, and you think, okay, a Cat 4 is going to double this, it won't. On the ground, miles per hour it is, but the impact of 150 mile an hour winds versus 75, just the destructive capability alone is a factor of 3 or 4. So 150 miles an hour is dead serious. That's where the storm surge will be, or the worst of it. The further you get from the eye, and depending on the structure, the more the wind speed decreases. The rainfall, pretty consistent throughout a much larger area of the storm. But the worst winds of the storm are only in the eye wall area. And people can look at these storms in the graphics. Wow, 150 miles an hour. Look at those winds. Oh, that's all. I meant the whole panhandle. No, it isn't. I'm not trying to downplay the damage. I've learned all this. So we live in Hurricane Alley here. And every time one of these things, I moved here from 1997, and I quickly became a consumer hurricane expert. I became an expert in how to interpret and watch the media. I became an expert in how to analyze the graphics that they use. And I became an expert in where the actual worst damage of a hurricane is. You do not want to get a direct hit. Now, everybody, well, yeah, of course, Rush, everybody knows it. Yeah, but outside the direct hit, the damage or the strength of the hurricane diminishes quite a bit. It's always the direct hit that is the most destructive, and then it starts to decline as you get away from the eye, depending upon the strength of the storm. This is going to have a wide destructive swath as a Category 4. Here's Governor Scott of Florida. This was this morning, a press conference, audio soundbite number 1, just to give you a taste of how local officials in the governor's office are dealing with this.
I just spoke with the president, who again offered all available federal resources. We continue to be in constant contact with FEMA and their team in the State Emergency Operations Center. That includes experts from Homeland Security, the EPA, the Department of Defense, Health and Human Services, and the Army Corps of Engineers. Along our coast, communities are going to see unimaginable devastation.
Unimaginable devastation. There's a little hype always in this to get people to listen, to get their attention. But there's always a lot of hype in these things. And as an expert, a local resident expert, I can tell you that people who live in these areas for a long time have heard this over and over again, and very rarely are these storms as bad as they predict. And so people over the course of time adopt an attitude, yeah, they're making it worse than it's going to be. For whatever reason, they try to scare everybody, get them to evacuate or what have you. People deal with these in different ways who live in areas and have experience dealing with them. Now, there have been 4 major hurricanes in the 2 years of the Trump presidency. And not a one of them, outside this mess in Puerto Rico, not a one of them have the media been able to label Trump's Katrina. They've tried in advance. They have not been able to. Seems the preps here are good, too. Out here, what did Taylor Swift come out and say the other day? Did she come out and anti-Trump, or did she come out? She came out pro-Democrat. Did what? Oh yeah, it was Tennessee. She came out against Blackburn, right? Now, what did the media say? The media said record turnout, record voter registration after Taylor Swift. How many people bought that? That is such caca. There's no way to measure that. That's wishful thinking. But the reason I bring this up, and I don't know Taylor Swift from a pile of coal. I don't know the difference. You could put a bag of manure in a bag out there, and I wouldn't know the difference in Taylor Swift. Now, the story is Taylor Swift-led American Music Awards hit all-time low in ratings. Well, how in the hell can that be if she's generating massive record voter registration and then hosts a television show with all-time low record ratings? Don't miss it. I don't have one thing or another about Taylor Swift. I'm not comparing her to a bag of manure. I'm saying that's how insignificant. But I'm saying the drive-bys trying to take these things. They're so desperate for good news. They're desperate For a bunch of people that are brimming with confidence over the fact they're going to be running the world in 3 weeks, I'm finding a lot of evidence of insecurity. For example, I have a story here. What is this? This is in the Hill.com, and it's a column by somebody named Brent Budowski, who sounds like the captain of a bowling team. Snerdley says he thinks this guy was their legislative aide to who? Who think? This guy worked for Lord Benson, a former senator in Texas. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. And you, Quayle, you're no Jack Kennedy. That Lord Benson, right? Okay. Well, whether he did or not, he still writes pieces for the Hill.com. Budowski, code red alert to Democrats. What? How the Democrats were smoking. I thought the Democrats are going to win everything. Like the Hill.com had a story yesterday, made it look like 209 seats are going to convert to the Democrat Party. Former First Lady Michelle Obama, one of the most popular, respected public figures in America, should spend a day taping personal endorsements for Democrat candidates for the House and Senate. This column is a code red alert. I'm reading from it, by the way. This column is a code red alert to Democrats and a call to arms for the most popular and respected Democrats in America, such as Michelle "My Belle" Obama, to lead the charge for all hands on deck at a critical moment for America and democracy. In my view, writes Budowski, there's a 25% chance that Democrats end the midterms with a nightmare scenario. What? 25% chance of a nightmare? Well, I thought you guys had it all locked up. I thought you pretty much had the House already done. Pelosi's already talking about being Speaker. You guys are already planning to impeach and investigate Kavanaugh and then Trump, or vice versa. Now there's a 25% chance that Democrats end the midterms in a nightmare scenario. That's not quite the same as a 93% chance Hillary wins the presidency at 5 p.m. on election night. Why are these people panicking? Mr. Budowski says this is not a moment for complacency or easy talk of blue waves. It's a moment for bold and maximum action and turnout based on a powerful and urgent sense of opportunity and danger. Says it's possible the Democrats win the House by a significant number of seats. However, it is also possible the Democrats gain only 20 seats, falling short of winning control. That would leave the Republicans dominant, with a smaller but even more right-wing majority, as the leading losers in the House midterms are comparatively moderate GOP House members. Democrats could lose 1 or 2 Senate seats, continuing a Republican Senate that is even further to the right and even more partisan than the GOP majority today. Budowski says it's this is in this nightmare scenario for Democrats and America if it unfolds, a vindictive and triumphant Trump, having won a victory for the politics of hatred, fear, and national. Don't you love these? You people on the left don't understand unity when you see it. You don't understand love when you see it. You do not understand confidence when you see it. You see love, you see hatred. You see excitement, you think you see fear. When you see thousands and thousands and thousands trying to get into Trump rallies, you somehow see division. A vindictive and triumphant Trump will stand alongside Republican leaders of the new Congress, feeling he's achieved an unstoppable dominance over his party, our country, and every branch of government, with all checks and balances destroyed. This code red alert, writes Budowski, warns about the danger of so much unchecked power concentrated in the hands of a president who tried to criminalize his opponent. What? Who did what? Who tried to criminalize who? Is this guy serious? tried to criminal. Hillary did engage in criminal activities, not only with her email server, but in working with the Russians and creating a phony dossier that, oh, by the way, there is now, thanks to John Solomon, folks, we've been talking for the longest time about how the Clinton administration paid Steele to write the dossier. That was then used by the FBI to go get a FISA warrant. John Solomon has now confirmed that happened. There is no doubt, and it's been confirmed in unclassified testimony by a lawyer for the FBI named James Baker. This is no more a matter of speculation. It actually did happen. Well, we didn't need it confirmed. We already knew it, but it's now been smack dab officially confirmed that the Clinton administration conceived and commissioned the writing of that dossier that everybody knew was fake and phony. And they used the law firm Perkins Coie as a cutout to pay for it, to make the money spent on this to look like legal campaign expenses. And then that dossier was taken to the FBI and used by the FBI to get a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. We now know it's incontrovertibly proved, even though Mueller's ignoring it, that the FBI tried to sabotage the Trump campaign and then tried to run a little soft, silent coup to get Trump out of office after he was elected and inaugurated. And this guy Budowski has the audacity to say Trump tried to criminalize his opponent in the last election. Donald Trump is the victim of criminality and always has been and continues to be. Now, this is a great illustration of the divide. There's nothing in common with this. This is such a perverted, disjointed, absent any kind of reality view of things that it is impossible to find any common ground. There isn't any overlap. We're dealing with an unhinged group of people who have lost the ability to reason and don't care to even. But the point of this is they're scared. They're worried. They don't really believe this blue wave business. Not thoroughly. Not if they're going to write pieces like this where they admit there's a 25 to 30% chance they could lose everything. And then Trump would win everything. And, of course, if that happens, then democracy has been flouted. The people voting their preferences is an example of democracy failing to these people when they lose. Quick time out. El Rushbo of the EIB Network. Back after this. Here's the calculation on the force of wind versus wind speed. Remember, the force of the wind does not double as wind speeds do. The force increases at a much greater rate. And there's a formula that scientists have developed. The force of wind goes up as a square of speed. So 2 times, if you've got 30-mile-an-hour winds, that all of a sudden becomes 60. The force of that would be much higher. So 2 times, you would square the 30. You'd get you'd get up close to 100-mile-an-hour force when you get above the 75-mile-an-hour limit is what it really is. So the 2 times wind is 4 times the force of the wind. 3 times is 9 times. You square the speed to find out what the force of the wind is. So 150 miles an hour. It's devastating. Now, where do those winds happen? Are those surface winds? Are those flight level winds? And this is what you have to have the Hurricane Hunter data to know. But they are reported as winds on the surface, 150-mile-an-hour winds at the surface. I mean, there's very little that's going to survive that. So we'll see exactly what at landfall the true wind force, the wind speed happens to be, and find out how close to the forecast it was. Going back here to the bowling team captain's piece, Brent Budowski, did you notice who he said if the Republicans hold on? If the Republicans hold on to the House and hold on to the Senate, did you hear him very frightfully point out how that would happen? It would happen because moderate Republicans would be losing and they would be replaced by conservative Republicans. In other words, if the Republicans hold, the Republicans who will win in these districts where Republicans are retiring, his theory is we could get even more conservatism. We could get even more conservative House and a more conservative Senate. He's putting the moderate Republicans at greatest risk for losing in his theory, in his code red alert, warning Democrats the Republicans could win it. So he's saying that moderate Republicans are at the greater risk of losing their seats in the House. Now, how is that possible? Given everything else we're told by the Democrat Party and the drive-by media, they tell us America loves the moderates. America loves the centrists. America doesn't want any part of extremists. America wants no part whatsoever of radicals. And yet there is the entire Democrat Party, which is nothing but radical now. My point is, again, do not fall for any of this hype that it is over and that the Republicans have no prayer and that there's going to be this gigantic blue wave, because not even the Democrats in their private selves, when they talk to each other in private, not even they really believe it. They want you to think they do. They want you to be dispirited or depressed. They are very alarmed. In fact, that the latest polls that show the Kavanaugh effect on the Republican side is ginning up turnout. It's ginning up interest. And they're really flummoxed and ticked off at a bunch of polling data. There's an NPR poll out there. There's a Fox News poll, a couple others that show suburban Republican women are saying in polling data that they have a renewed interest, an increased energy, an intense desire to go vote. This is not what was supposed to happen. That's why all of these attacks lately in leftist media ripping into white conservative suburban women. And do we need them or not? And we don't, they say. So this is not, as we sit here today, this is not developing as they want you to think it is. Back in 2016, do you remember any pieces before the presidential race anywhere in Democrat media warning people, hey, you know what? There's a nightmare scenario here where Trump could win. You got to dial it back. We got to be very careful. Do you remember any of that? There was none. They were so solid sure. They were definitely convinced that they were going to win. Hillary was going to win in the biggest landslide. I mean, they had Trump's chances at 3%, 7%, 10%, but nobody gave Trump a chance. In fact, some of the news even said Trump never thought he was going to win. Trump never even wanted to win. Trump was the most surprised guy in election day in the world when he won. He didn't want to win. They were all depressed at Trump headquarters. That's what they wanted you to believe. Now, they've started out saying the same thing, as though power is a birthright that every American realizes the Democrats have to be put back in power. Every American realizes the mistake of voting for Trump. Every Trump voter can't wait to apologize. Every Trump voter realizes, embarrassed, wants to fix the mistake, can't wait to vote for the next Democrat on their ballot. Now, all of a sudden, it's not just Budowski, by the way, either. There are others who are raising red flags out there that this might not be developing as they wish. Also from Fox News, the Homeland Security Secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, said yesterday that the Chicoms are engaged in an unprecedented influence campaign leading up to the midterms. This is the Trump administration's latest warning that the Chicoms are attempting to sway American opinion ahead of the elections. Who do the Chicoms want to win? Chi-Coms want the Democrats to win, right? Why do you think that is? Why would a bunch of international communist dictators want the Democrat Party to win? And the Chi-Coms are not our friends. The Chi-Coms want American leadership they can easily manipulate and triumph over. The Chi-Coms don't want any part of Trump. Donald Trump, this new trade deal, getting rid of NAFTA, you know what this has done? This has put China back on its heels like nobody thought. Donald Trump, the United States, now controls access to Mexico, all of North America, United States, and Canada. You've got to go through us. You got to make deals with us if you want to export your goods into Mexico, Canada, United States. Because Trump put together this new deal, getting rid of NAFTA, made the new deal. The Chi-Coms never thought this was going to happen. They don't want Trump. They don't want any more of Trump. They would be eager for whoever the Democrats put up. I just find it fascinating. International bunch of communists are trying to affect our elections so that their friendly Democrat Party in America wins. Think about that. 87-mile-an-hour wind. In terms of how everybody's talking about it, all eyes currently fixed on Hurricane Michael. It is going to devastate the Florida Panhandle, Category 4. That puts winds anywhere from 130 to 156 miles per hour. Storm surge, which is the primary killer in hurricanes, by the way, 9 to 14 feet. And that's not, don't think of storm surge as a tsunami. They're two different things. Tsunami, sometimes you can't even feel it. A tsunami is not a gigantic wave. A storm surge is. And people get the two confused. It's a big eye wall. It is. Telephone number 800-282-2882. The email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. Now, look, this is a minor technical point. I'm probably going to get in trouble for making it. There is a tweet here from the National Weather Service calling this storm the worst case scenario, but it isn't. It's a Category 4. It's not. The eye wall doesn't look like it's going to hit a major population center. Now, do not misunderstand me. I am not saying it isn't a big deal. A worst case scenario would be Category 5, barreling right over Panama City or Panama City Beach. Telephone number 800-282-2882. The email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. Now, look, this is a minor technical point. I'm probably going to get in trouble for making it. There is a tweet here from the National Weather Service calling this storm the worst case scenario, but it isn't. It's a Category 4. It's not. The eye wall doesn't look like it's going to hit a major population center. Now, do not misunderstand me. I am not saying it isn't a big deal. A worst case scenario would be Category 5, barreling right over Panama City or Panama City Beach. This thing looks like it's going to hit between, or has hit between, Panama City and Mexico Beach. Mexico Beach is such a small place that you have to expand the map to times 10 before it reads out that there's a city there. This is basically a wooded area, not heavily populated, but Tallahassee's right down the road from where this thing is going to hit. Now, this does not mean that Apalachicola and Pensacola Beach and Panama City Beach are not going to get hit. They are, but not by a worst-case scenario. I guess, look, it's a minor point. It's no comfort to people in the zone here. But it's just, again, I'm a stickler for the way things end up getting reported. And people get all ginned up and worked into a frenzy over things, particularly in politics. And it usually is not warranted. And it's in this way that media and others so successfully manipulate people, whereas people that try to play it straight and deal with it honestly and straight on are at a bit of a disadvantage. I mentioned this in the beginning of the program. Hillary Rodham Clinton did a TV interview with Christiane Amanpour on CNN yesterday. And Hillary Clinton said that this is a time for incivility. This is a time for people to be mean and rude and violent against Republicans. This is a time for it. And the time for this incivility to end will be when the Democrats take back the House or the Senate. Hillary Clinton discussed President Trump, the Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and civility in politics with Christiane Amanpour on CNN. Amanpour said last night, this happened yesterday, last night President Trump had a sort of ceremony for Justice Kavanaugh at the White House. He apologized on behalf of the American people for the immense amount of pain and harm that he said the judge had been put through. What do you make of that, Hillary? And what message, including the president's mocking of Christine Ballsy Ford for her allegations, what message does that send to women? And remember, women went for President Trump in 2016. Hillary said white women did. Amanpour. Yes, that's right, white women. I forgot. White women. We don't like white women, right, Hillary? That's right, we don't, even though I am one. White women, all women went for me. White women went for Trump. And look, white women have been voting against Democrat presidential candidates for decades now. The white vote has only then won twice in the last 60 years, my husband being one of the two, Lyndon Johnson being the other. So it's not a surprise. It's a disappointment that white women vote Republican, and not for me, but it is what it is. And therein, Hillary Clinton stumbled and swerved into a truth. Except for the very exceptional election year of 1964, which was following the JFK assassination, the Democrats have not gotten more than 50% of the white vote in a presidential election since 1932. Now, when you look at it that way, you can understand why in Democrat Party circles there's hatred for white people. White women have been rejecting them. White married suburban women have been rejecting them. This is why the feminazi movement sprang up. This is why the left has started concocting all different categories for non-white suburban women to be plugged into so that they can then be said to be Democrat constituents. And by the way, this is again why in 1965, Ted Kennedy and the Democrats reopened the floodgates to immigration. I need to remind everybody again, from about 1921 to 1923 through 1965, we shut down immigration. Not to zero, but we put very strict limits on it. And the reason was to be able to assimilate all of the immigrants that had come into the country the late 1800s through the early 20s. Assimilation was key to American immigration policy. Arriving immigrants all wanted to be citizens, by the way, and there were things they had to do to become citizens. They had to learn the language, and they had to learn the history of America. They had to be able to pass questions about the history of America on a test. And they had to swear and pledge their loyalty and devotion to the United States. And they were eager to do it, and they were happy to do it. Now, they maintained their ethnicity, the Irish, the Italians unit, but they wanted to become Americans. And they did. And it took a number of years to assimilate them all. Well, 1965 is when Ted Kennedy led the charge to reopen the immigration floodgates, which then, of course, led to, once that happened, illegal immigration ramped up in an uncontrollable way. And that wave of immigrants starting in 1965 came from third world socialist countries. The Democrats realized they could only win the White House if they changed the population of America. They were losing presidential elections with the Native American population because they were losing white women. And Mrs. Clinton just admitted it here to Christiane Amanpour of CNN. It never occurred to them to change their policies. What they had to do in order to attract white voters, what they had to do was change America. So back to Hillary. She said, what was done last night in the White House, meaning Trump apologizing for the nation to Kavanaugh. What was done in the White House last night, she said, was a political rally. It further undermined the image and integrity of the court. And that troubles me greatly, Christiana Manpour. It saddens me because our judicial system has been viewed as one of the main pillars of our constitutional BS. The judicial system has been viewed by you as election insurance. The judicial system has been viewed by you and Mrs. Clinton and the rest of the Democrats as your private refuge. You have looked at the court as a place you can stock like-minded leftist activists to make sure things that you believe in, which never could pass legislation, somehow become law in America. That's why they want the courts. If you want to really get frustrated, you've heard me say this, and you've probably heard a lot of other people, but stop and think about this. Outside of Obamacare, practically every liberal mistake, every liberal idea and belief that now is the law in this country would not have become law in Congress because it's a writing law when they take cases and interpret them and then pronounce decisions. Roe versus Wade is the most sterling example of this. But there are countless. The system has been viewed as one of the main pillars of our constitutional BS. Not by you. In fact, to Hillary Clinton and people like her, the Constitution's an obstacle as well. It's certainly not something to revere. Christiana Manpour, did you see any way? Even a conservative Steve Scalise, who I was speaking to yesterday, said the only way to repair America is to try to get back to some civility, to try to make it that even if we have political disagreements, we're not going to go to war with each other. We're not going to destroy each other. Hillary Clinton, well, certainly I would love to see us return to civility. Christiana Manpour, listening to one another, working on our differences. But that is not the Republican Party that exists today. That is certainly not the administration that we have in power right now. When the Republican Senate denied the right of President Obama to have his nominee for the Supreme Court, Merrick Garland, and here we go, off to the races again, mischaracterizing that. Get blue in the face. That's a Joe Biden rule. The Democrats invented that rule that presidents don't get to name Supreme Court justices during vacancies that happen in the last year of their term. That's a Democrat-inspired, instituted rule, and she knows it. But the Republicans didn't destroy Merrick Garland. The Democrats didn't have to fight battles defending his character and his life because the Republicans were not trying to destroy him as they did Kavanaugh. Anyway, the upshot of this is that Hillary Clinton says it's a time for incivility. It is a time for this kind of extremism because that's what we're up against. Steve Scalise, who was shot by one of the believers of Hillary Clinton at that Republican baseball practice, cannot believe it. Bill Cassidy, senator from Louisiana, responded to Hillary at a time when Republicans are being shot, stabbed, doxxed, beaten, run out of restaurants and send death threats. Hillary Clinton urges Democrats to be even more uncivil. What an irresponsible statement. Every Democrat should denounce. They're not going to denounce her. They privately, publicly encourage her. They applaud it. They support it. That is who they are. This is the party, by the way, that has been railing against all this incivility for I don't know how long. This is why I look at average American voters paying attention to this, and I don't understand how any of them can want to side with what the Democrat Party is doing, how they're doing it. I know it happens, but it's a mystery to me. My hope is, my faith is that this incivility, this insanity, this unhinged Democrat behavior is negatively impacting the Democrats. that the Kavanaugh effect, pro-Republican, I know that's real. The polling data indicates that that's real if you want to believe polling data. But we're never going to get a poll of people who disapprove of Democrat Party tactics and techniques. That poll is never going to be run. And if they did, if somebody on the left did run that poll and the results came back that it was quite harmful to the Democrats, they wouldn't run the results. They would get hold of Democrat leaders. The media would say, look, this is not working, you guys. You better get hold of your people and dial them back. The problem is the Democrats can't dial these people back. The Democrats don't control these left-wing radicals. That's why you don't see any public statements of disapproval. Don't think for a minute that elected Democrats disapprove of these radicals. They think that's their base. They know that's their base. They don't dare disapprove. They don't dare call these people out. They're not going to come down against them at all. That's why Hillary is out there encouraging more of this. That's what they think. Look, the Democrat Party thinks, and the media believe, that these protesters clawing the door at the Supreme Court and all of this genuinely insane, unhinged behavior, they think, folks, that that's pretty much 50% of the country. Because that's how they feel. They're mad. They hate Trump. They can't stand any of this. They can't stand that Trump won. They can't stand they can't get rid of him. They can't stand that Trump is succeeding. They can't stand these Trump rallies. They're convinced that half the country hates Trump as they do. So when they see these deranged, unhinged people with severe mental disorders running around doing what they're doing, the Democrats think that's who they're playing to and that that's who they have to play to. Here's Adrian in Ketchikan, Alaska. It's great to have you. We don't get many calls from Alaska, so this is great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I appreciate everything that you do for us fighting the fight on a daily basis. I was just calling to make a comment about Taylor Swift. In 2016, Miley Cyrus and Katy Perry were out there banging down college dorm doors, telling people to get up to vote. And obviously that didn't work. Miley Cyrus was crying after Donald Trump was elected. I think most of us mainstream Americans, middle Americans, aren't afraid of the Democrats and Taylor Swift telling people to vote.
Oh, I totally understand that. Don't listen. I've tried to say that I go either way, up or down, inside out, backwards, forwards on Taylor Swift. My comment was on the media reaction to Taylor Swift. So here's Taylor Swift. She comes out, says she can't stand that woman running for the Senate in Tennessee. Just can't stand her. The media, desperate, then reports that Taylor Swift comments caused massive Democrat voter registration. Just making it up. Then the president announces a half-year Oval Office tomorrow. What happens next? Mr. Jay-Z and Mrs. Jay-Z and Kim, a twofer. It's Kanye and his wife Kim Kardashian. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift hosts some music award show last night. Nobody watched it. The ratings plummeted to an all-time low. So how can it be that Taylor Swift sponsored, inspired, massive voter registration drive after criticizing a Democrat or Republican Senate candidate in Tennessee? You know, where is this massive belief and support if she's got this popularity and people can't wait to do what she says and express their support? Then why didn't the same people turn on and watch her show? Oh, we're not supposed to ask the question. Two different things, Rush. You can't extrapolate voter registration drives and audiences for award shows. Well, I can. You people can make it up left and right. I can draw my own analogies. I can ask these questions. I'm happy to hear you say out there that this stuff doesn't intimidate you. I think it hasn't intimidated average Republican voters in a long time. Elected Republicans are a bit of a different story. Dennis in Lamar's, Iowa, great to have you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Long-time listener.
Thank you, sir.
First-time caller. Thank you. Say, I was just wanting to comment on the Hillary thing. As I listened to it last night, and I can't quote it exactly, but she said if you disagree or if the party is destroying the things you believe in and love, that you should be uncivil. Would that not apply to the Democratic Party as well? Republicans, conservatives, being uncivil to the likes of her?
Sure it would. Sure it would. If that's the standard, if the party that you oppose is destroying your way of life, then you must be uncivil against them. But, and you know this, in the Hillary Clinton Democrat Party world, our world should be destroyed. That is justice. That is what's called for. Conservatism, Republicans being destroyed. That is the new morality. And we have no business fighting back or resisting it. We deserve what we get. Welcome back. Yeah, we got some juicy audio sound bites coming up. There was a new refrain, an old refrain aimed at a new target last night at the Trump rally. Lock her up it now includes Dianne Feinstein at Trump rallies. All that's coming up. In the meantime, Susan in Cary, North Carolina. Great to have you here. Hi.
Hi. Thanks, Rush. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet. Anytime.
Hey, I've been wondering for a while during the campaign and at Trump's rallies and things like that, I heard him say a lot of things that I hear you say all the time. And I can't figure out. I have a full-time job. I don't have time, to listen to you except through your 24/7 and your podcast. So I was wondering, is Trump a member of Rush 24/7? Can you reveal that?
Not allowed to reveal. Not allowed to reveal who our members are. We, of course, know. We know everything about our members, but we're not allowed to divulge any of that information. Now, you don't have a chance to listen. You basically check the website 24/7, the app, and the podcast every day.
Well, I mean, like I say, I've been a fan of yours for 30 years.
Yeah, I understand that, sure. Yeah. So you think
job,
you listen to this program, the podcasts, and check the website, then you watch a Trump rally, and you hear Trump say things that you've heard or read on the podcast or at my website. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I hear him say specific things that I know he's smart, but he doesn't come up with himself. But so I know, I mean, I can see him listening to your podcast like in the morning when he gets up at the White House and things like that. That would be the most efficient way.
I can honestly say that I do not know if the president listens to the podcasts. Now, he's told me he listens to the program when he gets a chance, and but who knows? But he's told me he does. I'm very flattered by your comment. Can I ask you a question before we go on, though?
Sure.
I want people to hear it. How do you get the podcast every day? How have you arranged to receive it?
Well, I have your app, and I download your podcast.
Right there on the app, right? It's not complicated, is it? You were able to figure it out.
No, I was not able. I mean, I'm sorry, I was able to figure it out. I think you have fixed a few bugs, which are good. The releases you fixed were good.
Yeah, we're constantly working on bug fixes. We with the app, just a new wave of them I sent up just the other day to the developer.
Yeah.
And I said, get this stuff fixed. I'm tired of waiting on it.
Yeah, it used to be if you were in your car and you're listening to hour one and then hour one runs out, it wouldn't go automatically to hour two.
Well, interestingly, that was not exclusive to us. That happened to be the way they ended up being tagged. And we did have to change the way they got tagged to have them download to you and play back in the proper order. But that wasn't just our podcast. It was any number of people's. Originally, it was an iTunes problem. It was the way iTunes organized them. We were eventually able to overcome that with our own. Now, did you use iTunes at all? You just get them straight through the app?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I bought my first iPod. I didn't even know what it was.
Right.
And I bought it because that's how your podcast was.
That's right. I wanted people to hear this. I want people to hear how easy it is. And the podcast is, how would you describe the podcast to people? What is it?
how would I describe it?
Yeah, what is it? What are you listening to when you listen to the podcast?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm listening for what you say, but it's not broken up by the commercials and things like that. So I'm getting your whole show. I can get all the information about what's going on, like you say. I mean,
And what does it take you, about an hour and a half to listen to the whole show? Hour, 40 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, it's great because, I listen to it on the way home from work.
Right, because there aren't any commercials in the podcast, right? It's just me.
Yeah, it's just you, and then I can knock out and listen to, your whole show in an hour and a half.
Isn't that
while
amazing?
I'm doing other things.
Isn't that amazing? That's because we don't double dip on our sponsors. And it's a benefit for people that join and become members of RushLimbaugh.com. If you want the program El Freebo, there it is in podcast form.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm happy to hear you're taking advantage of the opportunity. Yeah. We were among the first to make content available in this program available via podcast. All these people out there with their podcasts these days, Serial this and Breakfast Nook that and all that. We were at the front of the gang of people doing podcasts.
Yeah, and I'm glad. I've dipped into some other podcasts, but I don't know a lot about them, and so I just listen to yours right now.
Well, it's all a podcast is a transmission of audio on what was an iPod. Podcast is how it got its original name. Now the iPod has been incorporated into the iPhone and the iPad, and even now downloadable on a laptop. The name just held, but it was related to being able to download audio content like songs and music on an iPod, hence podcast.
Great. Thanks for explaining that to me, because as long as I can hear you, that's all I need.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. But just to answer your question, we can't divulge members. I wouldn't tell anybody you're a member. You never know who's going to do what. We guard that information. We promise everybody that is a member that we're going to protect their identity and their privacy. We work very hard at it, by the way. I mean, not just from third-party agitators and so forth. So that's why I can't tell you whether or not the president, and it wouldn't be just the president. You could maybe have the office of the president, the communication shop, any number of them could be subscribers. I just can't say. But I'm just flattered that I appreciate your comments. Let me just leave it at that. I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. And we're constantly dealing with bugs, little tweaks to the entire app. And I'm constantly, I've got a list of things I want the developer to add. You wouldn't believe the excuses and the reasons are okay, if you want to do that, $500,000 for an app on Apple TV and 16 weeks to do it? Are you kidding me? That's what it'll be. No, it isn't. There's no way an app is $500,000 on Apple TV and 16 weeks to write it. But that's what we deal with. But my point is we're constantly trying to improve this in terms of user intuition, just having it be as natural and easy to use without a manual and without any instructions. And our developers are really hot spot on the ball, we throw a lot at them because I want it to be as good as it can be. I want it to be the best. I mean, I am El Rushmo, and I can't sit here, with a half-baked app, and so we don't. And all the other things itinerant to it, such as the EIB store and the website itself. What did you say? Yeah, Snurdly. Yeah, I'm bragging about I'm not bragging. I'm pointing out that in the podcasts, we don't replay the commercials. There's a very simple reason for this. We don't sell advertisers on the podcast. We sell them the program. They buy it. We don't have a contract to run ads in the podcast. What, are you saying I'm undercutting myself here? No way. We could, if we wanted to. We could sell spots in the podcast as a separate entity. We could do that. But we don't. We don't do it. Even as Mr. Capitalism, you're exactly right, I am, and we don't. The podcasts are going to remain unencumbered as they are. People are already paying for them when they subscribe, don't you see? Well, then, it should stop other people. The only other way about it, if maybe make the whole thing free, but then make it all advertiser supported. Who's going to want to see all those ads if we do that? That would defeat the purpose. We don't want to clutter it up out there. But I got this. Don't sweat it. I got this. We'll be back here in just a second. Don't go away. Hurricane Michael now 155 mile per hour sustained winds, gusting to 175. This is at the eye wall. This is at the area of landfall, which is just not far from Mexico Beach, up the coast of the Florida Panhandle, about 15 miles west-northwest. The president today had a briefing with his FEMA people and Homeland Security people, and as he is wont to do, he televises the briefings. And one of the reasons he does it is so that he can let the media and everybody see what goes on at a cabinet meeting, what goes on at some other special meeting. This was the president being briefed by Homeland Security Chief Kirstjen Nielsen and the FEMA administrator, Brock Long, about Hurricane Michael.
They're reporting that this is one of the most powerful hurricanes ever to hit our country. Is that actually a fact?
In this area, this would be the most intense hurricane that struck this area since 1851, if I remember correctly. So this would be intense, very intense. And
this one is going to be heavy rain, or is it going to be the winds that are going to be the problem?
Storm surge and winds. And then for Georgia, they're going to see high inland winds. So you may see sustained Category 1, Category 2 winds with higher gusts. We're expecting a lot of damage inland as well.
This is President Trump with FEMA Director, Homeland Security, Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, being briefed on Hurricane Michael in the Oval Office. Here's more.
It's almost the entire size of the Gulf. When you look at it topically, it's almost the entire size of the Gulf, and they haven't seen that. Maybe they haven't seen that at all. Nobody's seen that before.
The eye diameter is pretty wide, which unfortunately is not good news as it makes landfall. So some people may say it's similar to an EF3 tornado making landfall in areas that are close to the eye.
I'm glad this guy said it's close to the eye. That's where, when you read about the high winds and the rain, that's where the brunt of it is. Now, this storm is so strong that it's bad as you get away from the eye. But the real bad stuff is the eye. This eye, well, I think I saw 30 miles. Maybe no, it's not that big. Now I'm looking at it. Not that big. The smaller it is, the more intense, usually. And as usual, it's the north and western quadrants here with the wind speeds speeding up and heading in that direction. Here's one more bite with the president and still with the FEMA director and Homeland Security.
We don't know. I know I was going to Pennsylvania. It looks like there are thousands of people already lined up, and probably will do that tonight. And we're going to go down here as soon as we can. We don't want to interfere with anybody, but we want to go as soon as possible. You have, right nearby, we have thousands of people going tonight, and many are there already.
Now, a lot of people, I just say I get some emails when this stuff happens. You're falling for it, Russia. It just proves what a suck-up you are. Trump's not doing this for any other reason that he wants to brag. He's just doing this for PR. No, friends, you may think that, and I'm not going to try to disabuse you of it, but the president's doing this because if he didn't, can you imagine the stories that would be published? Trump doesn't care. Trump didn't convene a meeting. Trump didn't ask very many questions. Trump didn't seem curious. Trump doesn't seem to have any real interest since he doesn't have a home there. All this kind of stuff that they would say about him. He does this for a host of reasons, but most importantly, I believe Donald Trump likes himself, and he's very proud of the job he's doing, and he wants people to see it. And he knows that the primary conveyors of information in this country do not convey proper information about him. This is only smart. Here's Ken in Oklahoma City. We head back to the phones. Great to have you, sir. Hi.
Hey, it's great to be on, Rush. Not only are you El Rushbo, but you are the lead voice of the new mainstream media. You should have the best app and podcast.
Should have the
app and podcast? Yeah. Hey, my point is today with Hillary's comment that basically liberals don't need to be civil to conservatives anymore. It reminded me of a profound quote I came across years ago, and maybe even you said it. But here's the quote: "A society is either moving towards civility or barbarism." And I see Trump trying to apply civil law and order to our society, and it's apparent that the liberal left is embracing barbarism again. Just wanted to get your thoughts.
But the question is, do I agree?
Barbarism.
Right.
With all of their character assassination attempts on Trump and Kavanaugh, the Antifa violence, shooting.
Yeah, there's no question about that. It's an active choice. I mean, Hillary Clinton's endorsing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sad to see, because this is not the Democrat Party of my mother and father. And I remember so well, the conservatism here in Oklahoma, where I live, in fact, in most of the states.
Well, let me ask you this. When was the Democrat Party the Democrat Party? What was it when that was all good and fine and dandy? What were they then?
I think it was before the 1940s and 50s.
What were they? Not when. What were they? What were they like? When the Democrats were the Democrat Party of your dad or your grandpa, what were they? What were they doing?
Well, the Democrats at that time, their basic issue was labor laws. And when...
Yeah, for what purpose? My point, the Democrat Party hasn't changed that much, is my point. The Democrat Party has always been rooted in the modern era, in our lifetime, in this century, in the previous. The Democrat Party has been rooted in anti-capitalism, has been rooted in pro-socialism and big government. They've just now abandoned any pretense of moderation about that and have gone all in on militant and violent socialism to achieve their means. My point, they're not that different. They're just masking less today. Watching a little bit of Fox News, I got a reporter out there standing in the middle of all this hurricane. His name is Jeff Flock. And he was telling Chef, you've been out here like I've been out here. We all love this. Chef, I'll tell you, we'd much rather cover man versus nature than man versus man any day. And Chef said, oh yeah, that's absolute. My heart melted. I almost broke down. Reachable at 800-282-2882. Email address lrushbo@eibnet.us. I'm getting quite a few emails today from scientists and people involved in meteorology. Say, Rush, don't let them get away with this. Don't let them. Rush, it isn't that big a storm by historical norms. It's a relatively small storm, meaning the size. It's powerful. It's a category, well, they say it's a category 5 now. Definitely category 4. They're saying 155 mile an hour sustained, 175 mile an hour gusts. But these meteorology people don't fall for this once in a lifetime or worst case scenario. It's not. The most recent one, I have a picture. Guy sent me a picture, color satellite photo of the. In fact, you know what I ought to do? I didn't have time. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. I'm going to put it in a Dittocam switcher. I'll do that in just a second in the break, or maybe during a soundbite, so that you can see what I'm talking about here. It's a picture of this storm, and compared to the Gulf of Mexico and the state of Florida, it isn't that big. You just heard Trump say in the audio we played of his meeting with FEMA, man, this thing's bigger. It's bigger than ever, right? It's bigger than the whole Gulf of Mexico. Well, it's pretty big out there, mister. It isn't. And in fact, this email says, Rush, Hurricane Allen in 1980 covered 2/3 of the Gulf. This isn't even close to that. You know, I'm happy to see this meteorological sensitivity to the exaggerations that are taking place in the media, because what these guys all know is that this is being used to advance the whole politics of climate change agenda and everything. Now, in saying this, I don't want anybody to misunderstand. I'm not saying this storm's not a bad one, and I'm not saying it's not destructive and dangerous. It just isn't what they're portraying it as. Worst case scenario, it isn't. And it's, all things considered, the entire geographic area of the storm is relatively small, which you will see. And this picture of it, by the way, doesn't have any color on it. It's a satellite of the clouds. There are no gradients. There are no deep, scary, bright reds and dark blacks and all that in this. So, excuse me for that. Hang on, and I will get a shot of this in the Dittocam. I want to let you hear, if you didn't see it. By the way, Trump rallies. Fox News has stopped carrying them now front to back. Have you noticed that? You have to find a Trump rally either on, I think, One American News, One American Network, or you can get them on C-SPAN. But Fox no longer goes wall to wall. I don't think there's anything about that to be said about it. I just think that these things go on for an hour and a half, and they don't stop to run commercials doing them, and they are now campaign rallies. Since we're in the heat of the campaign season, so I think Fox is dialing back, on the potential equal time claims, even though there aren't any Democrats doing rallies like this. So my point is that not as many people are seeing them, and last night it's such a contrast. I have to tell you, folks, and this is the kind of thing that you just, if you have any observational powers at all, you can't miss this. These people at Trump rallies, they're not violent. They are not threatening. They're not intimidating, and they're not dangerous. And they don't make anybody feel in danger or threatened. These are people having a great time. These are people that are upbeat and happy. They are excited to be where they are. They are part of something that matters greatly to them. They want to be involved, and they are. The contrast to the makeup of people and their behavior, the Trump rally and your average ordinary Democrat protest, is striking. You contrast the people at this rally last night. It was at Council Bluffs, Iowa. You contrast that with that unforgivable picture to me of these kids clawing at the front door of the Supreme Court Saturday afternoon. Let us in! Let us in! Let us in! Banging on the door and clawing at the door trying to get in. I didn't know if I was watching the Wicked Witch of the West Army or what, but it was certainly nothing that was inspiring or promoted, wanted to be part of. The Trump rallies are the exact opposite. And I don't mean that people at Trump rallies are a bunch of nerds and dryballs. Don't misunderstand. They're just wholesome people, and they're having a good time. And there's nothing threatening or intimidating, and there's a lot of laughter and just general happiness. And you never see that at any Democrat-sponsored event. And even if you do have some happy people in a Democrat-sponsored event audience, it ain't going to last long, because a Democrat on stage is going to get mad and outraged and get everybody else ticked off. And I want you to hear a little bit of the Trump rally last night. It's about a minute's worth. The Trump rally crowd has found a way to recycle and keep Lock Her Up relevant and current.
How about Senator Feinstein? That's another beauty. That's a beauty. Did you leak the documents? What? No, I didn't. Did we leak? Did we leak? No, we didn't. Did you ever see? No. She goes, no. He just said, no, we didn't leak. think they're talking about Feinstein. Can you believe it? Now, was that the worst body language, honestly? In other words, did she leak it? 100%. You don't hand matches to an arsonist, and you don't give power to an angry left-wing mob, and that's what the Democrats have become.
You don't hand matches to an arsonist. You don't give power to an angry... Oh, by the way, that word mob, the left is incensed that Trump is calling their supporters the mob. And so now there are left-wing stories defining the word mob, both on dictionaries and a Wikipedia, and trying to make the case that it's Republican crowds that are the mob and not Democrats. They're really, a bunch of Democrats, elected Democrats, are just indignant and offended that Trump is daring to call their supporters a mob. They're so unused to having it thrown right back at them with the same force they dish it out. They are so unused to having their ideas and behavior being criticized. And they really can't stand being laughed at. So now Dianne Feinstein, lock her up. I want to go back to 2016, to 2 years ago. 2 years exactly, October 10th and 11th. We have a montage here of people from ABC, CNN, PMS-NBC, PBS, ABC, NBC, talking about the election. October 10th, 2016, the election was over. Hillary in a landslide. Trump had no chance.
Nobody has ever come back from this far down and won the presidential race.
An unprecedented implosion on the Republican side.
Hillary Clinton is most likely the next president. You know he's going to lose.
He's losing and probably has lost the election already.
This is an unwinnable election by Donald Trump.
The election ended today.
This election's already lost.
The civil war in the Republican Party, a flood of GOP lawmakers abandoning their nominee.
The worst may be yet to come with Trump. They may be staring at a total collapse of the party by Election Day.
The cumulative effect has finally caught up to him. Hillary wins and wins big.
You want to hear the names there? The names here, Matthew Dowd. He used to be a Bush advisor who's now just gone, I don't know where. He's gone total left, total ABC, total off the reservation. Jeff Zeleny, who's a Nebraska University graduate, and yet he ended up in the left-wing drive-by media, New York Times. Now he's at CNN. It was Nicole Wallace of the Bush Communication Shop who said Hillary Clinton is most likely the next president. You know he's going to lose. But this is right after the Access Hollywood video was released, by the way. It's very close. John Heilemann, he is losing and probably has lost the election already. Sexual harasser, Charlie Rose. This is an unwinnable election by Donald Trump. Jonathan Karl, this election's already lost. Lester Holt of NBC. The civil war in the Republican Party. A flood of GOP lawmakers abandoning their nominee. F. Chuck Todd of NBC. The worst may be yet to come with Trump. They may be staring at a total collapse of the party. We just saw that headline yesterday. At thehill.com, the Republican House is in collapse. That's the story that had the headline that if you didn't know how to read it, you would think that 209 House seats are all of a sudden switching to the Democrat side. And that story didn't predict, it said we are in the midst of a Republican collapse in the House. They do not change. Everything is so formulaic. They are so predictable and predictably wrong. They're doing it all over again, and they're doing it on the same basis that everybody hates Trump. That whereas in 2016, it's impossible. People are not going to vote for this guy. That has become People regret voting for this guy. They can't believe they voted for this guy, and they can't wait to show up and apologize to America for voting for this guy. So they're going to do the only thing they can do and vote Democrat. They were wrong in 2016. Some of them, as we mentioned earlier, this Bud Budkowski warning that there's a red alert out there. Democrats may not be looking at a red wave. Here's the picture. Let's switch to it. I got it in the switcher, the Dittocam. Now, this is, if you're watching on the Dittocam, and I'll get this up to Coco so we can have it at the website as well. That is a satellite photo from GOES 16, I believe, the weather satellite, of Hurricane Michael. And you can see that it is, in terms of its total area, it's not a large storm. It's intense as it can be. It's a Category 5. But it does not. There was as a meteorologist sent me a note a moment ago, in 1980, there was a hurricane named Allen that covered 2/3 of the Gulf of Mexico. And again, the sensitivity here is due to the fact the media is hyping this, and even the Weather Service is hyping it because there's, of course, a political agenda attached, the climate change and all that. So I just wanted to share with you a sat photo that was sent to me to show that it's a tense storm, but it's not, even by historical standards, among the largest. And remember, the real intensity of these storms is at the eye, and then it begins to dissipate. But a Cat 5, it's going to take quite a while for dissipation to become no damage. Just heavy rain and wind. Brief time out. We will continue after this. Legacy Box. These are the people that digitize very old film and slides and still photos and old videos on Betamax and VHS that you can't watch anymore. You got them. People you know have them. These films and old photos, videotapes are stacked up in the attic. Nobody can watch them. Legacy Box digitizes all that and makes all of those old photos, films, videos come back to life. Now, they also like a good challenge. Every day, all day, Legacy Box receives pallets full of boxes via FedEx. The Legacy Box is the Legacy Box. They send you the Legacy Box for you to put your stuff in so that it's shielded and protected from gamma rays, X-rays, communists, and other things that will destroy your stuff in transit. Got to use the box they send you. Well, people all over this country are loading up Legacy Boxes, and they get pallets full of these things. And every one of those pallets contains very precious family memories. With great precision, they carefully transfer those memories from every imaginable format, film, video, put it all on DVDs or thumb drives. They transfer images of every kind to digital. It's a skill to handle all of those old slides, the reels of film, Super 8 and 16 millimeter VHS tapes. This stuff is old. It's brittle. They've got high-speed digital transfer, but they've got to be very careful with this stuff. It's all a challenge. They've got to maintain the original. They've got to copy it. They've got to do it rapidly. They've got to do it to perfection and get it back to you, none of it damaged. A huge challenge. Legacy Box welcomes it, because they know when they return those old media forms along with the shiny brand new DVDs or thumb drives that they will have achieved their goal. Now, when you think about it, nearly every picture-taking family has a challenge, too. How do you digitize and share pictures and videos of important people and events from years ago, in some cases decades ago? Well, now it's easy with an iPhone, but images and movies from 20 years ago and 30 years ago, not easy to copy and duplicate these things on your own. It's why Legacy Box has been relied on now by 400,000 plus families. LegacyBox.com/rush is the website. LegacyBox.com/rush. It is that simple. They'll have it back to you inside of 2 weeks. They'll keep you advised of the progress as they go. Here's Matt in Omaha. Great to have you, sir. Welcome to the EIB Network.
Rushville Mega Dittos from Nebraska.
Thank you, sir.
Been a lifer here in Omaha, and I'm very grateful to hear your voice every day. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I was at the Trump rally last night, and staggering as it may seem.
Wait, you went over to Council Bluffs?
Yes, I did, sir.
You did. Okay. Well, you must not be far away. You're in the border?
Exactly.
All right, yeah. Makes sense.
When we finally got in, we stood in line for about 5 hours. We finally got in through the downpour of rain, and there was almost as many women in attendance as there were men. Some women were there with their mothers, some with their young children. I was amazed at how many women were actually in attendance.
Why? Why were you amazed?
I just keep hearing that the suburban women have completely left the Republican Party, and that was an exact opposite of what I witnessed last night at a political rally.
Well, I can imagine you were surprised. Have you been buying into the idea that women hate Republicans because of abortion and Trump being a misogynist and all that? Then you show up at a Trump rally and it's at least 50% women. I can imagine you'd be a little boondoggled by that.
It was, I don't know if you've got any feedback from any other of the Trump rallies that you get feedback from, but...
Well, what about husbands? You said mothers and daughters. Were the husbands there? Could you detect that men were husbands, or were they...
The guy that I was sitting next to brought his daughter. He took her out of school all day so he could bring his daughter. I was just amazed. I don't think that there's any misogyny whatsoever of the Republican base. I think that...
Of course there isn't. This idea that this Republican war on women is a completely manufactured lie. You know, Mitt Romney being asked in a debate by Stephanopoulos, do you think states ought to have the right to ban contraception? What? Who's talking about doing that, George? I don't care. Do you think so? And Romney stumbled around, finally made the mistake of answering the question. Romney says X on contraception, Republican war on women was reborn and reignited. It's absurd. It's amazing the things they get away with. The idea that the Republican Party hates half the population. I have never understood how that worked. I mean, how they pull that off. It's nonsensical. I'm glad you saw that last night.
We now take
times of trouble, confusion, murkiness, tumult, chaos, insanity, psychological disorders running amok. I'm the guy, including in the good times. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Donald Trump responded to Hillary Clinton's criticism of the Kavanaugh event. She's very, very bad. It's attacking the integrity of the court. Trump said, I guess that's why she lost. She doesn't get it. She never did. Hillary said what was done last night in the White House is a political rally. It further undermined the image and integrity of the court. A reporter during a press availability in the Oval Office asked Trump about her comments. What's your response to Hillary? What's your response to Hillary saying that last night's swearing in was a political event? Trump said, I guess that's why she lost. She doesn't get it. She never did. I knew that a long time ago. Hillary never got it. That's why she lost. Hillary also said, get this, that the sex claims against her husband are not like the Kavanaugh confirmation because her husband faced intense investigation. Hillary has a point. We have to acknowledge she has a point. The allegations against her husband were substantiated. They were investigated, and Bill Clinton was found to be guilty. He was found to be guilty of all kinds of things. Kavanaugh is not, has not, and will not be. There's not a single allegation against Kavanaugh that has any evidence or corroboration. But all of the allegations against Bill Clinton have been proven. Hillary's right. She doesn't intend to be. But she is right. The allegations against her husband were substantiated. Bill Clinton paid an $850,000 settlement to Paula Jones. Jennifer Flowers had audio tapes of his come-ons to her. Juanita Broderick told others about her rape immediately. There was a pattern with Bill Clinton and sexual harassment. There's no such pattern with Kavanaugh. Oh, speaking of that, did you hear about this? Jane Mayer, part of the duo, Jane Mayer and Ronan Farrow, writing at the New Yorker. Remember that second story the New Yorker came out with that not even the New York Times would print because they couldn't validate any of it? Jane Mayer showed up at, what was it, the Atlantic? There was some kind of a convention or festival or some such thing. New Yorker reporter Jane Mayer suggested in an interview that she and Ronan Farrow reported on Deborah Ramirez uncorroborated allegations of misconduct by Kavanaugh out of eagerness to show a pattern of such behavior. Mayer told Elle magazine her recollection of the Thomas hearings. And so having watched this before, I knew that key issues would be whether the judge had a pattern of similar behavior, since that helps establish who's telling the truth when there's a standoff. There wasn't a pattern. This is amazing. She ran uncorroborated story to illustrate a pattern. I'm almost speechless in my attempt to explain this. The first story that was run about Deborah Ramirez, nobody could corroborate. Her story kept changing. There was no evidence for it. The New York Times found it so bad, they wouldn't allude to it, much less reprint aspects of it. And so Jane Mayer and Ronan Farrow run a second story that isn't true, just to establish a pattern. In other words, we're going to lie twice. We're going to run a false story first that has no backup, and then we're going to run a second story to show a pattern. Because I remember that with Clarence Thomas, other women came forward, and it showed a pattern, and it helped us persuade people that Thomas was guilty. And so we wanted to show a pattern of behavior with Kavanaugh. A pattern of you couldn't even substantiate a single allegation, be it from Ballsy Ford, or be it from Ramirez, or from Avenatti's client. Was her name Swetnick? I mean, this is just flat out admitting, yeah, we made up a second story. Well, didn't use those words, but yeah, we wanted to show a pattern. So essentially, they're saying we believe we can convince people that something happened just by writing a story alleging it. And of course, their buddies in the left will gladly accept an allegation as fact and then act on it. Yeah, we needed to show a pattern. Here is Krista, Smithville, Ohio. You're next. I'm glad you waited. Hi.
Hi, Rush. It's very, very cool to talk to you.
Thank you.
So I was just wondering, I was concerned and wanted to get your thoughts. You mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but with this mob rule as it is, and with Hillary claiming that their party needs no civility right now, I just get worried with these mobs and the leftists and the activists and them threatening, or if they begin to assault people, it just has me worried about provoking violence, to the point where we don't do anything pro-Trump or put Trump stickers in our yard or on our cars, because we truly are the silent majority. We're not out there showing it. I mean, I've been to a rally, but it just has me really scared and worried to go living my day each day.
That's totally understandable. You mean you need your support for Trump is not wavering, but you don't feel safe publicly demonstrating it or showing it. Is that basically right?
Correct.
I don't blame you a bit. The only thing that would worry me is if you said you were thinking about dropping support for Trump just to make sure.
Oh, no. No. It worries me with.
I tell you, a lot of people are worried about this. And I'll tell you, I think I think there are a lot of people like you who just don't want to call attention to themselves, because this is an insane group of people, and they're showing a willingness to assault and intimidate and attack anybody. And you're right to think that violence is just around the corner. And who wants to bring that on? So your point is that there are a lot of people like you who want to vote the way Trump would want them to vote for him, i.e. for Republicans coming up in this election that nobody may be counting?
Yes. Nobody's got signs in their yards, but everybody I talk to is 100% MAGA, go Trump, and nobody talks about it. And it's almost like, we whisper about it, like, "Ooh, are you okay with Trump?" Oh, yeah.
This is how in the old Soviet Union, people would go to the bathrooms in their house to whisper to each other what they really thought because they were afraid that the regime was listening to them. And so you're basically describing the same thing. The difference is that in 2016, there were Trump yard signs everywhere you went in states across this country. They're not there now. Now, Trump isn't on the ballot either, so there might not be all that many Trump signs to be put in yards. But your point is the outward support for Donald Trump is being suppressed by people to not call attention to themselves.
Great.
Well, your concern about violence is shared. Let me grab soundbite number 9. Listen to this, Krista. This is Rand Paul. He was on Fox and Friends today. And Ainsley Earhart said, you have a big fear about this rhetoric. Your fear is that somebody's going to get killed?
Yeah, someone almost did. I was there at the ball field when Stephen Scalise almost died from a very, very angry, violent man who was incited really by rhetoric on the left. And this hasn't been reported enough. When he came onto the field with a semi-automatic weapon, firing probably close to 200 shots at us, shooting 5 people and almost killing Steve Scalise, he was yelling, "This is for health care." He also had a list of conservative legislators, Republicans in his pocket that he was willing to kill. So what happens when Democrats say get up in their face, they need to realize that there are a lot of unstable people out there. There are people with anger issues. There are people that are prone to violence. There is going to be an assassination if this doesn't ratchet down, and I think the other side needs to really calm the rhetoric down.
Pretty much what you're saying. You're afraid of violence being visited on you. And here's Rand Paul fearing that an assassination is going to take place. The Democrats are not going to call their people back. The Democrats are not going to ask them to calm down. I think some Democrats themselves are afraid of these people. But privately, I think the Democrats are encouraging this. Because privately, I think the Democrat Party wants America to think that this unhinged behavior is pretty natural. It's pretty normal, that it is representative of a majority of American people. Like the Democrats want that perception out there. They want the anger and the unhinged behavior justified on the basis that Trump is so unacceptable, Trump is so bad, so dangerous, so sick, so whatever. There's a lot of reasons they're not going to tamp it down. There's a lot of reasons they're not going to distance themselves from it. And there's a lot of reasons why they're not going to ask these people to back off a little and be more responsible. They don't think it would help them. They think this kind of unhinged, I'm sorry for not having a better word, but I don't know of a better one. How many times can you call them insane or not right or mentally diseased or what have you? But regardless what you call them, the Democrats think there's value in these people doing what they were doing in the Senate office building and confronting people in elevators and basically frightening people. Whatever it takes to get done what they need to get done. So don't think that they're going to get a dose sensibility or responsibility and ask for it to be dialed back. And part of it, I think, is that some of the Democrats themselves are afraid of unleashing this behavior on themselves. Story here by our old buddy Roger Simon at PJ Media. The headline, Kanye is not alone. Blacks are deserting the Democrat Party. In the midst of the Kavanaugh madness, a fascinating development passed relatively under the radar Thursday. Today's Donald Trump approval ratings among black voters, 35% in the Rasmussen Report survey. This day last year was 23%. So in 1 year, Trump's approval rate among African Americans has jumped from 23% to 35%. No matter how you feel about polls, a 12-point jump in a year is significant. Because I'm telling you, folks, and you know this, every presidential race, 90% 88, 92% of the black vote goes Democrat. If that number ever became 70%, the Democrat Party would be up the teepee. They would be in deep doo-doo. And they know it. And everybody else knows it. Now, this 12-point increase, this is especially true and surprising considering the constant drumbeat from the press that Trump is a racist pig. Somebody's not buying it. And it's not just Kanye West. If this number grows just a little bit, the Democrat Party is, as I say, in deep teepee. And there is a story here, Celebrity Insider, Jay-Z and Beyonce Z are completely done with Kim Kardashian and Kanye West after Kanye's latest antics. Kanye is scheduled to have lunch with Trump in the Oval Office tomorrow. Somebody told me, if that happens, it'd be a big mistake. Trump need not have lunch with some celebrity after this hurricane's hit. Don't do it. Cancel it. I said, no, take Kanye with you if you go down there and view the disaster area. Put Kanye on the jet and go down there and survey it. That's how you have lunch with him. You don't break the date. You take him along with you. That's what I told him to do. Anyway, you know, we like success stories around here, folks. I mean, everybody here is a success story. Many of you in this audience are success stories. Simply Safe is a success story, and we love them. We love optimistic, positive achievement. We love success and success stories. Simply Safe is one of them. There are a lot of reasons to appreciate what Simply Safe has achieved. They took on an established market, the home security market, with a totally brand new way of doing it. And it was understandably a way that was going to require people to be somewhat technologically educated and fluid. Simply Safe is the home security company that is growing by leaps and bounds because so many people in this audience have come to rely on them for a safer home, a safer apartment, a safer condo. That's right. You can have a security system in an apartment that you rent now or in a condominium. Simply Safe has built a really good home security system using technology in new ways. You start with the fact it's built to operate on Wi-Fi. No wires. That is so huge in terms of installation, in terms of troubleshooting problems, in terms of saving time. No wires means no construction. I mean, it's the biggest deal here. Cellular is used for the monitoring, the base station that knows whether or not your house has been broken into or caught fire to call the cops or the fire department. No wires at all. And because of that, it is easy to set up and it's easy to use. They've made sure it works in the event of power outages or downed wires. It'll work. And unlike other home security companies, Simply Safe never asks you to sign a contract when you utilize the monitoring service. Other outfits do. You got to sign a 2-year contract and promise to spend $50 a month or more. For Simply Safe, the monitoring is $14.99 and it's monthly. Go online, simplysafeusa.com. You'll get 10% off if you buy a system at that website. No offer code to remember, just that website, simplysafeusa.com. Oh, 60-day money-back guarantee, meaning if you try it 2 months later, you don't like it, send it back, you'll get your money back. You won't send it back. You'll like it. Simply Safe, USA. A big leak from Google.com. Internal company briefing. Basically saying the American tradition of free speech has got to be thrown aside on Google because of Trump's election. It's insidious. We'll have the details tomorrow. Open line. Wait, is it? No. We'll see you tomorrow. Friday, a couple days. All right. The days are running ahead of me.